Okay, I wanted to go over one of the most fascinating papers that I ran into, and it's one of the papers I like to talk to people about because it's so unusual. So basically, this is a paper published back in 1973, and the title is Features of a Successful Therapeutic Fast of 382 Days Duration. So this guy did not eat for over a year, 382 days. So let's look at the summary. So a 27-year-old male patient fasted under supervision for 382 days and subsequently maintained his normal weight. Blood glucose concentrations around 30 milligrams to 100 per 100 milliliters were recorded consistently during the last 8 months. Although the patient was ambulant and attending as an outpatient, responses to glucose and tolbutamide tolerance tests remained normal. The hyperglycemic response to glucagon was reduced and laterly absent, but promptly returned to normal during carbohydrate refeeding. After an initial decrease was corrected, plasma potassium levels remained normal without supplementation. A temporary period of hypercalcemia occurred towards the end of the fast. Decreased plasma magnesium concentrations were a consistent feature from the first month onward. After 100 days of fasting, there was a marked and persistent increase in the excretion of urinary cations and inorganic phosphate, which until then had been minimal. These increases may be due to dissolution of excessive soft tissue and skeletal mass. Prolonged fasting in this patient had no effects. Okay, so summary. 27-year-old guy didn't eat for 382 days. His blood glucose was around 30. This number is weird, and I'll go over why that's weird. Usually, someone with a blood glucose of 30 milligrams per 100 milliliters would be comatose or dead, because that's an extremely low blood glucose level. So something is not right there. Like, I suspect that back in 1973, their machines were a little different and their blood glucose scale was a little different than what we do now. But what they noticed is patient responded well normally to glucagon and glucose tolerance tests. Potassium went down for a little bit. They gave extra potassium, but then after that, they didn't need to give him any extra calcium. He got his calcium levels in his blood went up for some reason towards the end of the fast, and then magnesium was always lower. Um, Throughout the thing, and he was excreting a lot of phosphate, probably because he was breaking down a lot of tissue and and using that for energy. Okay, so let's go to the methods. Patient AB, age 27 years, weighed at the beginning of this fast 456 pounds or 207 kilograms. During the 382 days of his fast, vitamins were given. So he had a multivitamin, and they gave him some vitamin C and nutritional yeast for the first 10 months. And then something called Padillac. I don't know what that is. And then non-caloric fluids were allowed ad libitum. So he could drink any fluid that did not have calories as much as he wanted. So he could have like carbonated water, he could have tea, but he wasn't having tea with like milk and sugar in there, that would have calories. So tea, so he's British, so probably tea, or he could have had black coffee too, I guess. From day 93 to day 162, he was given potassium supplements. That's because they noticed his potassium was getting low. He was giving some sodium supplements towards the very end. No other drug treatment was given. Initially, the patient was treated in the hospital for the greater part of the time, he was allowed home. So at first, I think they were just watching real carefully to make sure nothing bad would happen. And then eventually they let him go home. Um, and then they said they didn't collect his stool, but he didn't have to go to the bathroom very much. And so towards the end, he only went to the bathroom like once a month or once every month and a half. Okay, so here's the results of this. During this, he went from 456 pounds to 180 pounds. And then what's most interesting is most people that go on a diet, they just like gain it all back. This uh, seemed to be long-lived because they followed him for 5 years afterward. At the end of 5 years, he was around 196 pounds. So he gained back 16 pounds, but he was nowhere near his starting weight of 456 pounds. And here's the thing that's weird is you look at these blood glucose levels, so today blood glucose is measured in units of milligrams per deciliter, and these are the same units. It says 100 milliliters, but 100 milliliters is basically 1 deciliter. So this is milligrams per deciliter, and they said that he went down to 17. Yeah, this is like not this is not right. Um, like normal blood sugar is around 100. And so, yeah, this is not. So I think something's a little off here. I think their machines must have given slightly different values back then. And because I suspect at 456 pounds, he was a little bit diabetic and his blood glucose was high, probably like 200 or something. And so I think that this 50 is a different scale than we're using today. And then you see that his sodium, potassium chloride, bicarb, his electrolytes were pretty normal. His magnesium was below the normal range the whole time, which usually we think is like bad for your heart and stuff, but seemed to do okay. Didn't have any cardiac problems as far as they could tell. And so this was not a one-off thing. There's another paper that they reference back from 1966 of another guy who went from 432 to 235 pounds during um, 350 days of starvation. So that means that he lost about little under a pound a day, right, during his fast, because he lost a total of let's see, where are we at? So he was at 456. So he lost about 280 pounds, roughly. Yeah, about 280 pounds, 276 pounds over 382 days. So a little under a pound. So a pound of fat has probably about 3,500 to 3,700 calories. So that means he was burning through probably a little under 3,000 calories a day in fat. So that seems about right. That seems about right. That's probably his basal metabolic rate. And so he was losing about that much per day on average. So almost a pound a day. And so that is about the same as this guy lost. He lost about maybe half a pound a day, this guy. Yeah, so average rate of 0.72 pounds per day. Compared favorably to weight loss in other long-term fasts, which have ranged from 0.41 to 0.67 pounds per day. So there's been lots of fasts, 350 days, 256 days, 210 days. So these, what this goes to show you is that people can go for long periods of time without eating. Um, In fact, I think this is the Guinness. So I looked this up, and it is the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest fast. This is the guy. His name was Angus Barbieri. Um, he unfortunately died early at the age of 51. I'm not sure why, but this was him at the beginning of the fast, and this is the guy at the end of the fast. The Guinness Book of World Records stopped taking records for fasting because they didn't want to encourage unsafe behavior. Um, But yeah, it is crazy to think that someone did uh, went for over a year without eating. Now, I am not endorsing this as a weight loss method, but it's just a very interesting paper and shows that these kinds of things of day fasts of 200 plus days to over a year were not crazy. Several papers were written about these things, but very interesting. And just goes to show you how amazing our body is at dealing with starvation and lack of food. So, what's popular right now is this intermittent fasting thing, and it shows that your body is quite good at finding ways of dealing with the metabolism in the face of inconsistent food supply. But yeah, so I'll link this paper below. I think it's a fascinating paper, um, and and you should read it yourself. It's pretty interesting.